So today we're going to make classic puff pastry. So puff pastry is layers of dough and butter that have been laminated together to create sheets that then when you put them in the oven, the butter melts and then the water from the butter creates steam, and that is what puffs the pastry. So the key to making great puff pastry is making sure that you get those nice even layers of butter and dough throughout the whole process. So today we're going to make a classic puff pastry, which just means that the dough goes outside and the butter goes inside. So before we get to making it, I want to make sure that you have everything you need in order to make the dough. You're going to want your ingredients, obviously. My butter for the center is actually in the refrigerator because I want to keep it cold and control the temperature until I'm ready for it. You will need a stand mixer for the dough packet that goes around the butter. You're going to want a ruler. You could eyeball it, which is totally fine, but you're not going to get as precise of a product as an end result. So ruler, the bigger the better. Paddle for our dough, and you're going to need some parchment to put the butter packet inside, and we'll get to that later. So first we start with the dough. So I have AP flour and cake flour. I use half and half. The next ingredient is salt. The salt adds flavor, it also tenderizes the dough, and then a bit of sugar. The sugar is for flavor, a bit of caramelization in the dough afterwards, but it's mainly for flavor. The last ingredient for the first step is butter. We're just gonna mash our butter to get it to be room temperature and soft. Now the butter is also going to inhibit the gluten development in our dough that goes on the outside. It's also adding flavor. Okay, so I've got a nice pliable packet of butter. My beurre en pommade is ready to go in. All we're gonna do is cut the butter into the dry ingredients completely. Like, you want no pieces of butter. This is distilled white vinegar. This is also to inhibit the gluten development, but also add moisture. It's not a ton, it's just 4 grams. So go ahead and mix the vinegar with the water, and that way we'll put all the liquids in at one time. I do all of this with the paddle. There's no need to switch to any sort of dough hook or anything like that. Just pour your water in a slow, steady stream, and you'll see the dough start forming. So as this is mixing, gluten is developing, which we do want a bit of it, but we don't want a ton. So we want to make sure that we are not over mixing our dough. It is coming together now. Okay, and I'm going to stop it. I will finish it by hand at this point. And so all I'm doing is making sure that I'm trying to incorporate all of the flour into my dough without creating too much gluten. I'm literally just picking up the pieces with that. So I will wrap this in plastic wrap, and I'm going to chill it for 30 minutes. Dough packet. Ta-da! So while we wait for our dough packet on the outside, which is also called the détrempe, while that is being chilled for 30, we are going to make the parchment square for the butter packet that goes on the inside, which is called the beurrage. So we are going to fold this into a 6.5 inch square. So I like to fold one side and then adjust the other to fit. The key to making sure that your butter layers are even throughout your whole dough is, one of the ways is to make sure that your butter is even to begin with and is perfectly fitted inside your dough packet, and that way you don't have to worry about whether or not it's reached all the corners. So then we're going to make the other edge of the square. So the way I like to temp my butter quickly so that it is still cold but pliable is with a rolling pin. I'm just going to beat it. Okay, so I feel like we're pretty good here. I like to use a bench scraper to get it to be its final shape. Obviously we're gonna put it into a square, so I like to try and get it to look like a square. You can see it's about the same shape as that. Voila. It's as if I've done it before. And then we're gonna get all of the butter off of the counter because you want your butter in your puff and not on the counter. Okay, and then we're gonna fold up our packet. So I do like to try and give it a little, kind of seal it down a little bit. Okay, press and seal. And then we start with the sides. Okay, so we've got our packet. I'm gonna flip her over, trying to preserve our square shape. Next, what we're gonna do is we're just gonna roll from the center into the corners. We wanna fill our corners first because those are the hardest bits to get. So from the center into the corner, you're rolling it so that there's no gaps. No gaps. Okay, so I have no gaps, but I do have like a very fat part right here. That's no big deal. Our butter is super temped. It's still cold. It should still be cold to the touch. And we're just gonna roll it until it's an even distribution, okay? This is where a lot of times it does tend to rip. So you wanna be careful and you wanna be gentle but firm. Okay, so we are ready to do our first set of folds and our creating of it's called the piton. Grab a little bench flour, flour your bench, just an even dusting, nothing crazy. Now I would have liked to get this into a 10-inch square when I put it in the fridge, but alas, it wasn't cooperating, so I'm gonna have to do that now. So I am going to start to roll these kind of wings, let's call them wings, out. And this is what is gonna allow me to cover my butter without any sort of gripes. All right, so we've got our dough and our butter. Now I am going to carefully unwrap my butter and I'm gonna leave it on the parchment for right now. So that way I can place it where I want it, but without, you know, creating any drama. Peel off our parchment. We're gonna start folding our corners. So you can see that it's still a square, okay? And we're gonna seal our edges with our rolling pin, okay? So we're gonna roll this out. We wanna keep the width about the same, but we want to give her a nice roll. We want to go out to 18 inches. So if you can see like it starts to, as you roll, it starts to get like a different shape. You want to use your bench scraper to corral it back into its correct shape. Thirds, brush that off, and then thirds, right? This is one envelope turn or one single turn. We're gonna see if she will let us roll her out into one more turn. But if not, then we'll just chill her for a minute, or probably 8 to 10. Your dough should start to look a little bit more smooth. If it was looking a little rough before because of the way that we mixed it. Okay, so we've got our dough. So it's warm in my apartment, so my butter has started to melt. I've gotten my 2 single turns. I'm gonna mark it and then I'm gonna wrap it and chill it for probably 45 minutes just because it's so warm. So it's been chilling for 30 minutes. It's still pliable, but it's definitely more firm than it was before. It feels a hint of cold. If it's too stiff, then you're gonna wanna let it temp on the counter before you roll it, because if you roll it and the butter is too cold, then the butter will break into pieces and you'll get broken pieces of butter in your dough and you won't get those nice, beautiful sheets of butter. You want to be firm, but not so aggressive that you are breaking your butter or, you know, moving your dough in a way you don't want to. I am going to do my single fold, which you remember means to fold it halfway this way and halfway this way. So this is our 4th single turn right now. We're just gonna see if she'll go any further before I have to chill her again. Anyways, that's our 4th fold. It's in 30 minutes and we are ready to roll our final set of single turns for our classic puff pastry. So I just want to make sure that I've got everything moving together, all butter and dough layers are moving together, so I'm doing smaller, shorter movements to start. Usually by this turn, by your 5th turn, your dough is starting to get a little bit more gluten, and so it's going to give you a little bit more resistance than it did at the beginning. So you want to be sure that you are moving quickly, but also carefully. I am going to chill this just briefly before I finish rolling it out. You could technically fold it, but then you're going to get a really small dough packet, and then it's going to be even harder to roll that last roll. So I'd rather just pop this in the fridge, cover it with plastic wrap, and give her a 10-minute rest. All right, we're back. We are ready to continue our next turn here. So we'll just keep rolling it, just to get that last couple inches, really, is all I needed to chill it for. Okay. So, second to last. This is our 5th single turn. So we're gonna fold her in, fold her over, and turn, okay? So we're gonna see if she'll cooperate and do her final turn right now. Most likely I will have to chill her in between, just like the last one, just because the gluten has developed a little bit more by this point, and it's, it's putting up a fight. So if you're rolling it and you roll it somewhere and then it shrinks back on you, it needs to rest. So we'll just grab her, put her on her little half sheet, cover her back up, and we'll give her another 5 to 10 minute siesta before we do our final fold. So we are almost done with our final fold here. Just had to let her chill a little bit, which is not, there's no problem with that. It's just making sure that you're keeping your ingredients cold and you are being mindful of your gluten formation, right? So that's all we're doing here. Okay, fold her in, fold her over, and kind of seal her down, right? So tomorrow we're gonna roll it out, and so we wanna make sure that we kind of set ourselves up to do that. If you can get it a little bit flatter at this point without over aggravating the gluten, then that's good. It'll help us tomorrow. We've got our dough packet and we've done all 6 of our single turns, so we're ready for her to do her final chill. So what that means is we're gonna leave her, we're gonna wrap her, we're gonna put her in the refrigerator, and we're gonna let her sit for at least 2 hours, ideally overnight. But if you don't have time or you don't want to, then that's totally fine. It will definitely roll out easier if you do let it sit for at least 12 hours. So our dough has been chilling about 12 hours and roughly overnight. This gives the gluten time to relax so that you can roll it out thin, but without having it aggressively shrink up on you, and also the time for the butter to re-solidify so that you get those nice, beautiful layers in your puff pastry, which is what we are all about here. So I've just taken this out of the refrigerator. It's pretty cold. What we need to do is let it temp just a teensy bit, probably 5 to 10 minutes. It depends on how cold your refrigerator is, honestly. And then we'll be able to gently start rolling it. So our dough's ready. The first thing we want to do is bench flour, right? So we don't want a ton, we want less than we do for bread. So we're going to start to gently warm it up. You don't want to aggressively move it at this point in time because the butter's going to break, and then gently start to roll her out. Now this is a little untraditional, but I do flip my puff pastry over, especially at this stage, to roll on both sides. We were taught not to do that in culinary school, but honestly, don't tell them. Okay, so you can see that I'm just slowly getting it to go to stretch a little bit more, making sure that my bottom is not sticking. Also, you want to make sure that when you pick it up and you put it down, that you do so gently, because It's very easy to smoosh the layers, totally learned in school, to smoosh the layers together, and then you've just undone all of the work you spent hours doing. So I'm just slowly working my way around. I am pushing fairly hard. I mean, this is like I am using my body weight. I am using force to do this at this point, because now that it's this size, it's gonna temp pretty fast. So I'm in a little of battle against the clock and the gluten at this point. So it is getting to a point where I am about ready to chill it. It's about 1/4 of an inch right now, I would say. Okay, so you can see that when I roll, it's like shrinking back on me. It's not egregious, but it is doing it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna put it on a half sheet that I have in the refrigerator, and then I'm gonna chill it. Probably only for like 10 minutes. So you wanna treat puff pastry like it's pie dough almost. So you don't wanna pull it like this, or, transfer it in any sort of aggressive way. All right, so we're just gonna keep rolling it. We had a nice little siesta in the refrigerator. And you're gonna wanna get it to be somewhere around 1/8 of an inch. If you do it too thin, if you roll it too thin, then you're gonna run the risk of incorporating your butter into your layers. So there is such thing as rolling your puff pastry too thin. I'm gonna keep trying to find the places that are a little thick and roll those places out. Now, when you transfer it back to your half sheet pan, it is going to shrink just a touch, just because the gluten has been activated, if you will. We're gonna chill this one more time before we use it, or freeze it. Honestly, I do wanna roll it just a teensy bit thinner. It's still kind of pudgy in some places. In order to transfer it, you can roll it, but I find that honestly just adds more, it can be kind of cumbersome, and then the weight of the puff can actually smash itself. So I move it back and forth like that, and then I'll toss it over my arm. It depends on where you're going and how you're gonna move it, but I fold that down, or you can put another parchment, and then I fold it over itself, like that. Before I roll this again, I'm gonna cut it in half so that it's easier to manipulate in a home setting. So I'm gonna continue rolling just this half of it. So this is the thinness that you want to use puff pastry at, 1/8 of an inch. It is technically ready to use. It's warmed up a bit, so I would rather chill it. So the key to puff pastry is keep it cold. Keep it cold. I am gonna put this back in the refrigerator, and I will let it chill about 30 minutes, and then it's ready to use.